Welcome back to the channels Tapa Alho Azul and Super Academico. Let us keep the reading of my book Phenomena. Today we will read the chapter 18. Don't forget to subscribe. Let's go. Chapter 18. The days went by calmly. We were becoming closer to the Aborigines as well as to one another. We spent most part of the days keeping company to the beaters. The walks through the prairies were the best opportunities to make them open up to us, for it away with the initial boredom of hunting. Except for Carla, who always came with us, the two other women of the group would remain in the village. They didn't really appreciate that wild a whole lot. They busier observation the social life of the tribe. Angela, the psychologist, conducted interviews with the elderly and the women. They wouldn't talk a lot, but as often as possible she managed to gather information that was useful to everybody, the relationship paranormality had with them. It was generally seen as something normal. Laura, the doctor, tried to help the sick ones who were brought to her from the tribe as much as possible. They wouldn't allow her to go very far. They had their own medicine and only let her interfere when they couldn't find any other way out. That was hard. We could have lost their trust at any given moment. Their hospitality could thrown away, mainly by a shadow that followed us around. They knew that we came here to observe the Amerinija, just as the anthropologist did. It was impossible to forget the fact that one of them would have to die in order for us to be able to observe such phenomenon. Besides, they were attached to one another. I imagined it was very hard to live nearby a bunch of people who was just waiting for one of them to die in order to observe an event. I think there was just one more reason for them to refuse Laura's help. During one of the hunting sessions, where two beaters were present, Kanega, John, Bob, Carla, and I, we had what would be one of the most profitable days for our future observation. Perhaps due to Kanega's presence, the men felt more at ease to talk. Joseph, aren't you homesick? America is so far away. Kanega's interest lied on the strong connection they had. I think it was hard for them to understand why someone would get so far away from their beloved ones merely to observe a funeral. Yes, I am, Kanega. I don't expect you to understand it, but I feel I have to know everything that's around me before turning to what is nearby. When they called me to go on this trip, I thought that would be an opportunity for me to do that inspection. The two beaters were walking ahead of us. Bob was walking a little distractedly, but John and Carla were paying a lot of attention to our conversation. But why do you have to go so far away? It wasn't enough for me to just look around myself and see what was there. That sentence sounded a little childish to me, but it made sense. I'm not sure, Kanega. You may be right. Carla looked at me a little sad. Kanega, can you talk about the Amerinija? One of the beaters changed his steps. I think he understood us. I don't know much about that, John. I never witnessed any. When I was little, there was a previous chief's one, but wouldn't allow children to partake in it. I remained back in the hut and just heard the sounds. Then Bob asked, what type of sounds? Like thunders, I'd say, besides the calling chants. Then Carla asked, and how are those chants? The two beaters started to talk amongst themselves. They sounded just like children lullabies. His answer got me intrigued for a second, but it made sense in the end. It was the encounter with peace. Noticing the interest of the two men who were ahead of us, I asked, did you guys see the last Amerinija? They turned around, looked at Kanega and saw no restriction. Yes, we did. The other one would simply shake his head affirmatively. Could you describe what you felt? That question sounded weird even to Kanega. I felt at home. I was the only one who got satisfied with that answer. But John said, what do you mean by at home? Carla also displayed some curiosity. Do you mean your home? Everyone's home. The answer made even more to me now. Everybody was confused. Bob didn't have the slightest idea about what the Aborigine was talking about. But, and what about, John wanted more yet. Calm down, John. You will understand it in the due time. He was not very satisfied, but did shut up. We kept walking. The beautiful combination of prairie and silence ruled again. My mind was already formatting what would be the basis for my report. Having come into contact with such simple people elevated my theories to such a congruent stage that, at that point, I could not make up my mind as to whether or not the Aborigines' answers were right. It was fascinating to see those jigsaw pieces falling into place. We held our weekly meeting that evening. John was the president of the table and Carla took note of everything that was voted for and decided upon. The folks that remained back in the village today? What did you do? We marked the place where the equipment will be installed on the day of the event, when it does happen. Angela seemed to have lost her enthusiasm. Did you interview the deceased's wife? Yes, I did. I felt sorry for her. She seems to miss her husband up to this day and age. Their faithfulness was memorable. I will write a summary of the way she felt on the day of her husband's amnesia. I saw his face being lightened up by the moon and the bonfire. Sadness was present in everybody's face while we all waited for the key moment. The wind started to blow strong and the stars were covered by the clouds of the spirits. We began to sing the chants. We were saying goodbye to Onala. We danced around his body and the spirits began to dance along with us. We were saying goodbye and they were welcoming him. The pain of the memories and the happiness of the moment got mixed up and then Onala's light floated toward the lightning. And a feeling of deep inner peace came over everyone, both the living as well as the dead. We were only left with a lot of nostalgia in our hearts. Everybody looked at each other. Angela's dislike with that wild life didn't seem to affect her efficiency. She read that in a very cold yet totally clear way. Then John. Joseph, what do you make out of that? I think that, in different ways, all these narrations are connected. The anthropologist, this woman, the two men this morning, and the chief with that story he told us on the Day of the Dead. There doesn't seem to be any contradiction to indicate a possible fraud or delusion, Carla adds. That's true. The wife's description of her husband's light is perfect. Just like my parents. Everybody seemed convinced and intrigued. Bob, the physicist, was the least satisfied one, because his science could only be evaluated in the spare of the moment. That was true of the seismologist also, but to a smaller extent. I think we all have enough material to begin writing our reports, at least the human part of it. Unfortunately, we ought to wait for someone to pass away. Gosh, I feel like a vulture. Everybody laughs at John's joke at the end of the meeting. It sounded funny, but that's exactly what we were, at the time being. We were hoping someone would die in order to reach our goal. We were getting close to the end now. Everything we learned. Everything we went through together. Even the way they took pity on us during the hunting. They were hospitable during meals and attentive during our questionings, even though sometimes they were afraid to reply. It was fascinating to be around such gentle people who didn't ask us for anything in exchange, besides respect, and thank to God we were able to give them that. The 8 of us went through those days with the Aborigines in a very smooth and soft way. Under the extreme heat of their sun, we learned something new every day. It was our final way of overcoming our cultural differences. In a way, I was already missing those half-naked men and women who, with such a simple view of the world, their world, managed to live more happily than all of us. We just needed to wait now. I hope you have enjoyed this reading. Don't forget to subscribe to both channels and like and share the video. Bye.